My name is Sylvia Raskin with the Prosperity Agenda. I'll tell you more about our organization in a moment. The presentation that we'll be delivering today is around money mindset cards, and more generally around our money mindset. What does that mean? What are our beliefs and values about money? And a product that we have that that are conversations that inspire actions, easy ways that we can help people talk about money and deal with a lot of the financial stress that people are experiencing right now. So today we'll explore our money beliefs and we'll recognize how money creates power and envision a world where everyone is safe and cared for. I almost put, envision a world of financial wellness. And to me, financial wellness, if we kind of break down some of that jargon, what it means to me is that everyone is safe and cared for, that people in our current world have enough money to be safe and cared for. So I'll tell you a little bit about the Prosperity Agenda. We design pathways to economic and racial justice, rooted in the wisdom, experience, and expertise of families enduring economic inequality. So what that means is that we work with families and staff to imagine and test and realize programs where all people can thrive. And we really, when we think about systems change, we work on interpersonal relationships, we work on the level of mindsets and narratives, and the level of practices, what we actually do in our day-to-day work, so we can shift those whole systems. And the fields that we tend to work in are financial education, quality jobs, whole family approaches, and we offer our design and evaluation consulting to nonprofits and government agencies. So I kind of want to start here that, this is something that a lot of the speakers have already talked about, but millions of Americans are in financial crisis. About half of the adults who were, about 40 million Americans have lost their jobs due to the coronavirus pandemic, and about half of those adults who were laid off remain unemployed. Pew Research says that about 32% of people have themselves or someone in their household has taken a pay cut or lost a job. And, 32% of people have taken a pay cut, and 42% of people have either lost a job or someone in their household has lost a job. Of course, the coronavirus pandemic has exacerbated our racial and income and gender inequalities that were already present in our country, with lower income adults continuing to be most affected by the coronavirus job-related pay cuts. So the percentage, 47% of lower income adults say someone in their household has lost a job or experienced a pay cut. This, these issues are compounding on each other. The Commonwealth Fund says that 7.7 million workers have lost jobs that were tied to their health insurance. And this is obviously the worst time possible to lose your health insurance during a global pandemic that is tied to your job. In terms of, this is unfortunately only the beginning of a financial crisis that, associated with coronavirus and the economic downturn. And I think, for folks on this call, the idea here is not to overwhelm you or anyone else kind of with this, but to be prepared that this isn't something that's going to go away once we're done with the coronavirus pandemic. This is the economic fallout is going to last much longer, and we can take steps now to be able to ease that pain for people in our communities. So one thing I wanted to mention about the mortgage foreclosures is that for federally funded mortgages, people were able to have a 6-month forbearance, but a study found that people could skip their payments and make them up later if they would ask their mortgage lender for that. But out of the people who were eligible, about 680,000 people, about the 1 million people who are eligible, about 680,000 people have not done that, and they are falling behind on their mortgage payments. So to me, that kind of underscores the necessity of connecting with your financial provider, with financial institutions, and for nonprofits to be connecting with our community members and bridging that divide, because there are programs like Bank On, there are programs like this mortgage foreclosure, but if people don't know about it and don't know or have a hard time talking about it or asking for help, people can be falling through these the safety nets that were created. Looking a little bit deeper to people's experience of financial stress, about 7 out of 10 people are concerned about their finances during COVID. Extremely concerned, very concerned, somewhat concerned, making up the greatest percentage. And what people are concerned about are having enough savings, job security, income fluctuations, paying utility bills, and down the list. So major financial issues kind of hitting everybody during this time. And, we don't want to underestimate the effect of that psychological and emotional stress on people's lives. The number one reason that, people in relationships fight, or people fight with their kids, is around money-related stress. I kind of want to zoom out a little bit to, let's see, I want to make sure that, okay, great. Where the slides got a little bit of a delay. Zoom out to a larger instance, because this is what we're going to talk about, the dominant beliefs about money. I want to underscore that this is happening at a societal level, that workers, at an institutional level, that workers are paid dangerously low wages. The Prosperity Agenda just came out with a strategy brief around essential workers, and what frontline workers want employers to know about their work. And one of them is that the wages are dangerously low. We think about, we think about, when we talk about minimum wage, $7.25 an hour, that hasn't been raised in 11 years. And we think about $7.25 and we really calculate that out to an annual basis. Folks are making $15,000 a year. So, yes, people are having trouble paying their bills on an annual salary of $15,000 a year. I'm sure you've maybe, heard these statistics around that someone working a minimum wage job, in no state in the United States can they afford a 1-bedroom apartment. And then we look at median wage. This is the median wage of everyone in the United States is $10.25 an hour, which calculates out to $21,000 a year. And when we compare that with the top 1% of earners in the United States who are making $355 an hour, we really have to ask ourselves why we are allowing our society to be in a place where most of our folks are making about $21,000 a year. And this is a little, what we work on at the Prosperity Agenda is, narrative change. And one of the dominant narratives is that society doesn't value people who are paid low wages, unfortunately. Because our society values people primarily by the amount of income they make. And if someone doesn't make a lot of income, then they're assumed that they haven't worked very hard, and therefore shouldn't be paid more. And so it's this self-fulfilling prophecy. If people don't make a lot of money, they assume that their job is easy, and therefore assume that that shouldn't be a high-wage job. So that's one thing we really want to kind of look out for, is to, one, not be evaluating people on the income they make, and not assuming that frontline work is easy. In the age of coronavirus, workers are risking their lives on a daily basis, and frontline and essential workers are providing valuable skills and efforts to their jobs. There's communication skills, interpersonal, teamwork, quality control, safety. All of these things are very important to our society, and are only getting some of the attention they deserve now. Unfortunately, a lot of the attention that they're getting now are a bit of a hollow, folks are heroes, folks are essential workers, but we need to make sure we kind of back that up with the action of actually paying people for the value that they're delivering to society and the value that they're delivering to the businesses. And so we want to kind of look at wage growth as well, from a societal lens, and see that wages have grown for the rich, but not the bottom 90%. Wages for the bottom 90% of our economy, almost everybody, have only grown by about 24%. When we compare that to the top 1% of the population, their wages have grown by 158%. And the top 0.1%, their wages have grown 340%. So what we see is, the wage gap continuing to increase, and at this point, continuing to increase exponentially. So that's kind of the primer, and let's kind of dig into what we can do about this, our agenda today. So our dominant beliefs about money, let's take a look at some of those. So I hope you're seeing this personal responsibility slide. I hope. Maybe I'm on a little bit of a delay. So Anne Price talked about this yesterday as well, and I really loved her kind of exploration of it. So dominant belief in the United States is that people have personal responsibility. So people choose, instigate, or otherwise cause their own circumstances, which in our society means if they are in distress, well, they only have themselves to blame. Or if they're successful, wow, they must be very smart and have worked hard for that. And this mindset can, if you follow along the train of this mindset, it says because we cause our actions, then we can also be held morally accountable for our actions. Therefore, what someone's life looks like is of their own choosing, right? This very individualistic perspective, and what Anne Price yesterday called toxic individualism. And then combining that with the dominant belief in the United States of meritocracy, some research has found that the United States is more likely than other countries to believe that we have a meritocracy, meaning that everyone has the same opportunities to succeed and make money. Basically to say that our society doesn't play a factor, right? There are not societal forces that are changing the playing field for anybody, and that everyone kind of has a fair shot at this, right? That pairs very, very nicely with this idea or this belief in personal responsibility. It's all up to the individual. How hard they work is going to determine their outcomes. It's going to determine their success and determine their wealth. So these create this really toxic scenario where we believe, or we might be led to believe, that someone's net worth is their self-worth. So if they're successful, it is a direct result of their efforts. And if they're in distress, they only have themselves to blame. Okay, I'm gonna pause for a moment to answer some technical difficulties. Okay, the phone call wasn't Alice. Hopefully things are still going well. All right, so personal responsibility and meritocracy connect in this very toxic situation where people assume that their net worth is their self-worth. If they're successful, it's a direct result of their efforts. If people are in distress, they only have themselves to blame. And this corrodes so much of our society. This on an individual level, people feel like they're worthless. They feel like, their circumstances, they can beat themselves up while being in this very difficult scenario that we talked about earlier, feeling like they can't pay their bills and therefore they are personally responsible for that. At the same time, some of our providers, I used to work in direct health services. And it was very difficult. I would come and see people in for the same issues over and over. And it was very easy, to get into this place of like, well, what are you doing here again? And it was only when I kind of looked at things from this more global perspective to say, we'll see this in a moment, that the results of society, trickle down to the individual, but we can't say that the individual can necessarily affect all the way up to society. So we need to take this more global view. Okay. This worldview kind of comes together, and the result of it, and this comes from some work by Movement Generation, who I'm very inspired by. Basically, it excuses extreme wealth extraction and hoarding, right? The image we looked at earlier, that the 1% is earning $700,000 a year, while most of Americans are earning $21,000 a year. People can, if they hold this belief, they can justify it by saying, well, that means the people in the 1% must have just worked very hard, right? Or when we look at that extreme wage growth gap, where people's at the 1%, their wages are growing exponentially and the bottom 90% are hardly growing at all, we say, well, I guess they must not be working that hard. But that really breaks down when we look at it. You're saying only 1% of the population is working hard. You're saying that person is working 300 times as hard as someone who is, working at a restaurant. That person is working 3,000 times as hard as someone who's cleaning a home. It really breaks down. And I can, if you go to our website, theprosperityagenda.org, you can look at that paper, and that paper kind of breaks down that idea even further, to say how we can start valuing people who are doing frontline work, people who are, being paid low wages, and how it is not a personal responsibility issue. It is more of a societal issue. Okay, that was a lot. Sorry to lay it on heavy there, but so I thought we could take a moment to kind of take a deep breath together. Okay, so this is the tool. So I mentioned I worked in the health field, and this is a tool from public health that I find really, really valuable. This is what got me out of this idea of like the personal, the individual. So it's called the socio-ecological model. And it says that there is this nested system that is having interrelationships with each other. So at the very center of this circle is individuals, is people. So this is the level of attitudes and beliefs and knowledge and behaviors. And a lot of times our interventions, working in the nonprofit field for a long time, our interventions are happening at this level, saying like, folks need more education, or we need to change people's behaviors. We need to, encourage savings. We need to, people need to spend less, things like that. And that really, people's individual personal actions are important, and they're just one part of this whole picture. So people exist, within interpersonal dynamics. So people's friends and family and your social interactions have a big impact on what that person's attitudes and beliefs and knowledge and behaviors might be. And that's something that's really important to explore. So if someone is in a relationship, and in that relationship, one person gets laid off, well, that has, a big effect on what their conversations are going to look like, or what their relationship stress is going to look like, or what their household management looks like. And then we kind of go to this wider level of institutional. So those folks are maybe having some, financial difficulties, especially in this age of coronavirus, and they go to institutions to try to help. So they go to a bank to get some relief. But maybe that bank, they don't feel. It depends. Like, how are they going to be treated at that bank, right? Is really going to determine, how they feel and what actions they might take in the future. We did some research in Minneapolis last year, and looking at folks who were unbanked and underbanked and kind of what their experience was going into a bank that was offering a similar program to bank on. And in that scenario, a lot of people felt like this bank was welcoming, this bank treated them with dignity, that people cared about them, that they had staff that looked like them. One woman said it wasn't all just white guys in white button-up shirts. And so that, there was this feeling of being at home. She was offered coffee when she came to the bank. So things like that go a long way in affecting people's ability, affecting all these other issues. And then we have the level of community. So this is, our social networks, our groups, our places. Where are institutions situated? How does the community feel about things like financial institutions, right? And we know that there has been, from our last presentation, there's a lot of distrust and around financial institutions, in many cases, rightly so, because of the, discrimination and exclusion that's happened in the past. So how a community feels about those institutions determines how someone is going to relate to those institutions. And then we've got the level of societal. So this is dominant worldviews, just like, we talked about a moment ago with personal responsibility and meritocracy. Those worldviews determine how all these different levels interact, right? If the institutions have a meritocracy worldview, that's going to influence the kind of products they offer and the kind of service they deliver. If the societal worldview is don't talk about money, that goes all the way down to the personal and the interpersonal. And if someone is struggling, they're not going to ask for help because they think that's shameful. Okay, let me see if there's any questions here in the chat. Amazing. We'll dig into this a little bit further, but this is one of my favorite tools for really breaking beyond that toxic individualism. And we can actually later in this workshop, we'll explore some interventions at these different levels. So I want to say, this is kind of my point from earlier, individuals suffer from systemic issues. We see the outcomes of these systems at the individual level, and that might look like debt, or repossession, or eviction, foreclosure. As those things kind of snowball on each other, we can see low credit scores, therefore higher interest rates. It's more expensive to borrow, or limited or no ability to borrow, or what we're here to discuss today, limited ability perhaps to even get a banking or checking account. But while individuals suffer from systemic issues, addressing these individual issues doesn't fix the system that's caused them. Of course, we need to address these individual issues, right? If people are in debt and their credit score is low, that is having a material effect on their life. And therefore, we want to make sure that someone can raise their credit score so it doesn't cost so much to borrow, or they can achieve the financial goals they want to achieve. However, doing that by itself won't trickle up. Does that make sense? Like, it trickles down, but it doesn't trickle up. There will continue to be these issues, these effects on the individual if we do not get to kind of a higher level of intervention. And what this model that's been used for years and years in public health says is it's not about one intervention is better than the other, but we need a mix. We need a mix, and they need to happen simultaneously. So I think the big call to action for this presentation is to think about where your organization or institution is intervening in the system, and how you might influence, a level or two levels above what you are currently doing, because we've got a lot to address in our society, and this moment of, this very extended moment of COVID, I think, has given us the opportunity to do so. And the social uprisings around Black Lives Matter and racial equality, is giving us this mandate to really do that. And I think more and more people are ready for this change to happen, and we need folks in the institutions to take it on. So let's get into kind of what we can do about this. So we can build on success by recognizing how families manage money. So as I mentioned, the prosperity agenda does a lot of whole family approaches. And the core of those whole family approaches is the idea that families are doing really well. Actually, I mean, families are very resilient. They know how to manage money, and there are many things they are successful at. So let's build on that success. And that starts with kind of addressing our own mindset that income and wealth are not evidence of good decisions, right? And then therefore, poverty is not the evidence of bad decisions. No one made a series of bad decisions that has, caused, that poverty. We looked at wage stagnation. We looked at what the majority of Americans are actually making in terms of wages. The bottom line is people don't have enough money. It's very hard to make a budget. It's very hard to not go into debt when you plain do not have enough money. But families experiencing poverty, and this is a lot of firsthand qualitative research that we've done with the prosperity agenda, is that they know how to manage money. If you don't have a lot of money, you have very creative, inventive ways to spend that money and to take care of yourself and your family. So we're going to look at some of those a little bit more in depth. So families have savings goals. This is something that's a bit of a misnomer sometimes when people say, well, we just need to set goals. And it's a bit missing the point, because families have goals. If you'll go ahead and advance that slide. So about the breaking this down, this is some research we did in 2018, 2019. The number one savings goal that people have is to cover a surprise expense or emergency. So exactly kind of what the recommendation is, to be saving money for that emergency fund. We know it's harder than it looks. And we also know, a lot of people, it really depends on what you measure. A lot of folks will measure savings in the bank and say that is the evidence that someone is successful at savings. However, what that misses, people should have $400, $500 to be able to cover that surprise expense. What that misses is, what if someone just used it on an emergency, so their balance is zero? Does that mean they're bad at saving? No, that means they're great at saving, and they spent it on exactly what it was for, which was a surprise expense or emergency. So we really need to be careful and considerate about how we're measuring people saving success, or how we're measuring success in these situations, because we can be unintentionally measuring things, and then the data looks like people aren't good at saving, but people are actually very good at saving. Going back to this part, other people's savings goals are around specific purchases, like a car or a home. And then about 33% of people are not currently saving money, often as a result of just kind of not having that additional disposable income to be putting into savings. Families also have savings practices that work. So something that happens, and we were just talking about measuring success. We tend to measure success as money in the bank, but when we actually talk to families, they had a lot of non-financial ways to save money. So purchasing extra items, we talked to a couple people who said they purchased extra diapers because that was their thing. They felt like if they had diapers, then they're going to be okay. So they would purchase extra diapers when they had it, purchase extra food when they needed it, collecting change. I talked to a woman who had collected a bunch of change and put her goal on top of that, like kind of 5-gallon water jug, put her goal on top of it. And it was like trip to Disney World. And they collected their change every day and they talked to their kids about it. And were able to, go on many family vacations using that method. Paying extra on their bills. Some of them are financial, putting money in savings or hiding cash. And some other ideas around saving gift cards. We talked to some families who said, I save all the gift cards I get as presents, and then for a birthday or for a celebration or for a holiday, then we use all those gift cards at once. So recognizing all the different ways that families are saving money and not assuming that if they are not saving in the way that we're accustomed to saving, then they're not saving. So families also talk with their children about money. There's a lot of research, a lot of importance around discussing money with children, and how can we have multi-generation approaches to financial wellness. And this is happening. This is already happening, which is great news. So, 48% of almost half of people are often talking to their kids about money, 20% sometimes, going down to 25% never. And I would say that, that piece around never, it is likely that it's hard, as I've kind of restated a couple times, it's difficult for people to talk about money. It feels taboo. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like someone's whole identity is up for debate when we talk about money. So I can totally understand that reluctance to want to talk about it, especially with kids. Our research also showed that, young people are picking up what's going on around money in the home, whether they're having explicit conversations or not. So, kids are listening in to their, when the adults in the house are talking. Kids are paying attention at the store. Kids are, very, very perceptive in terms of this. So any ways we can make those conversations more explicit and encourage kids to be part of that conversation is really wonderful, because a lot of people's goals around money have to do with their children and having, making sure that their children are safe and well taken care of. Families think about money constantly. This piece gets me. Like 53% of people say that thinking about money consumes my thinking on a daily basis. So what this points out to me is that it's not a knowledge issue. It's not, think about how many lattes you're getting. Think about, the spending decisions. People are thinking about it all the time, to the point where you might be where you might get to a place of decision fatigue often, because you're constantly making these micro decisions and these big trade-offs around money. I'll share another example. We talked to a woman who said she had to, or that there's a 7-Eleven near her house that she can walk to. So she's deciding to get groceries. Where should she go? 7-Eleven is nearby to the house. She can walk, but the prices are a little bit more expensive. Or does she take the car and spend gas money to go to the grocery store that's further away, but the prices are lower, right? So those are the, sophisticated decision making that people are doing on a daily basis. And if we just kind of look at the surface level and say, well, why'd you go to 7-Eleven? The prices are more expensive. We're missing all of the thinking that people are doing. Okay. That's awesome. I'm just seeing in the chat, Emily sharing about wishing that parents talked more about money. Yeah, I agree. Myself included. I'm one of those persons who just kind of like listened at the door to kind of what was going on. And it was stressful. It was stressful as a kid too, to kind of just hear that and not sort of be included in what those financial goals might be. Okay, so reflection moment for everybody. Whew, I believe money. So I kind of want you to think about this. Maybe put it in the chat if you feel comfortable. What's your belief about money? We just kind of went through a pretty large section there. What do you believe about money? Go ahead and add that to the chat. Okay, great. key to security. Money is managing both sides of the balance sheet, more problems than solutions. If you don't have money, you'll be shut out of opportunities. Yeah. Money is a pathway and a tool. It's the means, not the ends. Yeah, absolutely. Money can change your life. Money conversations must be addressed under systemic challenges. Yes. Thank you. That's what we're about to get into right now. Money is a major stressor. Okay. Let's get into this next section. So this next section is around seeing power. So I said money creates power. That's maybe one of my beliefs about money as well. And so let's take a moment to kind of look at that. All right, so we've got this classroom experience. Kind of wanted to take us back maybe to when we were in school. Got a kid raising their hand. We've got other children looking at them, maybe expectantly. Where is the power in this scenario? Kind of what might be going on in here? Who's got the power? If you can kind of write in the chat. I feel like we might be on a bit of a delay as well, so I'll wait a minute. All right, Alice is saying the teacher. And maybe let me be more specific, like what power, who's got the power and what power do they have? So the teacher's got the power to say that's the right answer or that's not the right answer. The teacher's frowning. The teacher has the power to, really, I mean, they're really in control of that room, right? To say, oh, that was a stupid answer. You didn't do your homework, right? To really embarrass that person. What else? We might have, some of these kids in the room might have more power than other. We've got social dynamics in here, right? Like if there are kids who are more popular, right? Or more likely to, use, cut someone down with insults, they might have the power. Who else? Got hand raised. The person who's raising their hand could be, they have the power, right? Maybe they're the smartest kid in the room and this kid has, always answers correctly. And so they, might not be giving the other kids an opportunity to share. Okay, kid in the front row might think that the kid raising their hand is dumb. Absolutely. Kid in the front, don't rat me out, man. Recess is coming. Right. So the teacher has the power to withhold recess, withhold the class. I mean, how many people have been late to their next class because the teacher didn't let them out, right? So power dynamics running rampant in this, more than meets the eye, more than just a teacher asks a question, a student is answering the question. All right, let's look at one more. All right, got a pre-COVID situation here in a healthcare setting. Who's got the power and what power do they have? We've got a doctor scenario. Let's see. I would say, so let's say in this scenario too, I want you to think about The insurance provider. Oh my God. Thank you, Ryan. That's a great point. I just wanted to go to this place around institutions or community level norms or societal level. Who's got the power? I love that. The insurance provider is not even in this picture, and they've got the power. Okay, I'm being told there is a 30-second delay, so that is good to know. All right, Lynn says the doctor decides what work can be done, the nurse because she'll be doing the work, or the CNA. I mean, maybe even at the hospital level. The hospital's trying to cut costs, so we're not going to, we're not going to do what doctors do on TV and try to go the extra mile for someone. Okay, the patient has power to refuse treatment. Yep, doctors and nurses have, in a lot of cases, a lot more education and experience in the field, using technical terminology that patients might not understand. Yeah, in some surgeries, the patient is unconscious. Absolutely. I mean, we could even say, at a societal level, we don't know what racial or gender biases or other implicit biases, doctors and nurses might have. Plenty of evidence and research that says that Black women are more likely to suffer, intense medical issues because doctors don't believe them, don't believe their pain. Okay. All right. Thank you for participating in this exercise. So let's take it to our own system. Let's talk about power imbalances in the financial system. Just reminding myself what this slide was about. Okay. Yes. So who has power at these different levels, right? If we're thinking about this, who has power in the financial system, and what power do they have? I've got a couple examples up here on the screen. So landlords have power over renters. Banks and credit unions hold the mortgage and hold power over homeowners. Banks and credit unions, have access to loans and banking products and therefore have power over community members. We looked at the teacher one. So teacher, in a lot of cases, people, if teachers are assumed to know all of the answers and know the information and be able to judge if someone is right or wrong, they've got power over a financial education class. Same with a banker, right? A banker is assumed to have all of this financial information and therefore know right and wrong. And in a lot of cases, that's probably true because there are technical issues. But in that banking conversation, that person doesn't feel like they're coming to the situation with the same level of knowledge or power. Other examples that you want to highlight, this is the call to action kind of portion, is let's spot these power imbalances in the financial system so that we can do something about them. All right, Jared's saying the government. Yeah, tell me more about the government. I mean, setting interest rates, setting some of these safety net protections that we were talking about. Yeah, at the societal level. Yeah, I mentioned, our work at the Prosperity Agenda. We work with a lot of different government agencies who administer TANF and SNAP and WIOA, like trainings, cash benefits, things like that. And they have the power to determine what is required for those, what's the eligibility, what is required for those different social safety net programs. And, a lot of the folks we work with at the institutional level have the power to decide how much of those things, like where can we bend to make a better experience for people, and where can we work on our interpersonal, at the conversation level, at the coaching level, to make sure that we're treating people with dignity and respect and as partners in this work, which may be different from how the societal government expectations are setting things up. All right, Ryan is saying, friends and family, the advice that you're hearing before going into a financial institution or financial class. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that at the community or the societal level, what are those dominant worldviews? Or at the friends and family level, what are you hearing about X bank or X credit union? What are you hearing about banks in general? What has been your parents' experience? What has been your grandparents' experience? Is really huge in determining someone's willingness to engage and how they'll engage with those organizations. Yep, Jared is saying societal values are represented in laws. Absolutely. What laws are passed and whose interests they protect. Yep, that's a really great point, right? At that societal, at that laws policy level, who did the CARES Act? Who did that most benefit? And who did it leave out? All right, excellent brainstorm there. So in terms of addressing these power imbalances, the first thing to do was to notice them. And the second thing you can do as a provider, whether you work in a financial institution or whether you work in a community-based organization, you can listen to people's financial needs. So not assuming what they need, but really saying what's going on for you, what's coming up for you, what are the conversations that you're having, and then seeing what you have to offer that can meet those financial needs, right? Just not doing this kind of one size fits all approach. And the second thing is recognizing that a lot of people have financial shame, and have been taught that you don't talk about money, that you don't talk about when you're struggling with money. And what you can do what can be a salve for that is non-judgmental conversations and questions. You can make it a norm that it's okay to talk about money, and then it's okay to have money stress. It's okay to ask questions about money. That doesn't mean that you have failed as an individual. That doesn't mean you aren't successful. Everyone goes through this. Actually, the majority of people have financial questions and experience financial stress. So let's get through this together. Reducing that money shame. Reducing that money shame means people can ask for help when they need it. Too many people don't talk about money or feel so much shame that they don't ask for help until it is too late. And the situation has snowballed, or something very worse things have happened, right? So we want people to ask for help as soon as possible and feel like there is someone on their side who they can ask for help, or be an intermediary, or point them in the direction of a financial institution that they trust. Just like Brian said, that friends and family connection. What you hear about banks and financial institutions makes a really, really big deal, or is a really big deal. We did a project with immigrant and refugee families in South King County, and what was really important in that is the connection between the financial institution and the community-based organization. So the community-based organization was running financial education classes, and what they did was invite someone from a financial institution to come sit in on those classes answer those more technical questions, and just be a face that people can recognize, and they can build that relationship, start to rebuild that trust with community members, and that led to a significant increase in people signing up for bank accounts or accessing those financial products, and just feeling comfortable going into a financial institution. And then secondly, connecting people to the most relevant information for them. A lot of our research, or in part this research was done with a group of apprentices who were working in the trades, and actually a group called Anew, who's really fantastic, training women to go into the trades like electrician and plumbing and things like that. And they were going through this training program. They weren't getting paid, but in 6 months, they were about to experience a pretty big increase in their incomes. So they didn't need to know about, making a budget, or, right now wasn't the thing that they needed, So really the timing is super important to people, and connecting people to the relevant information, because that is what they can actually use. And what else can we do as a financial institution? Acknowledge those mistakes and distrust, not assuming that people automatically know that things are trustworthy. Focus on access and belonging. Some of the stories I shared earlier around making sure that you're, I know we're not in person very often anymore, but making sure that's a welcoming experience. If you have if you have accounts that meet the Bank On standards, making sure that all of your employees know about that. That was something that was the case in Minneapolis, where there was, a Bank On like product, and some of the sales associates, like, people said that when the sales associates knew what that bank account was, without trying to treat it as sort of this like separate second class kind of thing, that increased their feeling of belonging. That made them feel like, oh, people know what's going on. This is a legitimate bank account, and this isn't just some offshoot special program that like I have to be transferred to 3 different people to find out about, right? Thinking through all those different ways, like if we can focus on belonging, what happens? What actions would we take if our goal is belonging? Being transparent about fees, about expectations, anything that folks might need to do, and offering people what they need. So, that can look like community conversations. That can look like partnering with community-based organizations to really get a deeper understanding of the products or services that are most relevant to people. Okay, let's do a reflection moment. What can I change or inspire? What can you change or inspire when it comes to financial wellness? So feel free to put this in the chat. I think they mentioned in the chat, these PowerPoints will be available for everybody. And I would encourage you to kind of think through these questions with your team. I hope to provide some ideas, some pathways. And these are deep questions that you can, that warrant longer discussions. And it will be wonderful to see what folks come up with. Okay, let's go on. Just got about 10 more minutes here. So I want to introduce you to, I shared that we have a product called Money Mindset Cards that we developed based on all of this research with folks who are experiencing financial insecurity. And so this is an option. You can use these cards in a variety of different ways. But really their main purpose is to start non-judgmental conversations about money. They are 30 unique conversation cards, conversation starters, that are designed specifically to reduce shame and anxiety about money, to be responsive to real people's needs, build on people's financial strengths, and for the facilitator, have these conversations with ease, with a sense of joy, even with a sense of fun, and focus and understand what is most relevant to people, because you're having a conversation that is flowing and landing on the topics that are most important to people. We found that they increase confidence and action amongst in our evaluation of the cards. People have a increased feeling of financial control, an increased feeling of social connection. A lot of folks were mentioning in the chat that, feeling this idea, the idea of financial shame, right, is that you're alone and that you will be not worthy of belonging because you have failed in this financial setting. But when people start talking about their finances in a group setting, or even, one-on-one with a coach, people say, oh, there are other people like me. And because people have had success, because people are very good at managing their money, hey, there are other people who are like me who are succeeding. And that gives me hope and inspiration and ideas about how I can take some action as well. And what we've seen is increased use of financial services as well. So I know that that's a main goal of our work here with Bank On. In terms of organizations, we've seen community-based organizations and financial institutions develop these stronger partnerships and relationships, and reduce biases and assumptions about financial behaviors. The more conversations you have, the more data kind of gets put into your system. And it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know that the majority of Americans are making $21,000 a year, right? And that can really start to reorganize how we think or how we see the outcomes that people are experiencing right now. And we can see, therefore, higher empathy for different financial experiences. So organizations can be or the cards can be used in organizations for training purposes or directly with participants or with community members. So some feedback we've gotten on them is that they're simple and engaging ways to start conversations. People let their guard down and explore attitudes towards money. They give people an opportunity to breathe. And the conversations among participants start more easily and conversations grow more organically. I used to teach high school, and it was very difficult sometimes to have a conversation and get that conversation going and get it going in a way where people were excited to share. The whole lesson was kind of built on the Socratic method, and we want people to be sharing their experiences. And if you've taught any classes, sometimes you just have a group that does not want to talk. And so it's very valuable to have an opportunity, or very valuable to have a tool that gets conversation going and gets people excited to talk. Very lastly, kind of to conclude here, is to envision financial wellness, a world where everyone is safe and cared for. I think we'll kind of speed through this just because of time, but I guess this is our last brainstorm, is how can we ensure that everyone is safe and cared for, that we live in this world of financial wellness. Oh, I don't have to speed. That's good news. Okay, cool. We'll do this then. We'll do the brainstorm. How can we ensure that everyone is safe and cared for? And I want us to think about the socio-ecological model on these different levels. What can we do? And this doesn't necessarily have to be your commitment, but this is a brainstorm. This is what can we do to really change this system of finances. All right, so I'll let folks put that in the chat. And there's some examples here on the screen as well. Go ahead and put in the chat, we've got some examples here, on the personal level of attitudes, beliefs, knowledge, behaviors. I mean, I feel like we're good at this one, right? Coming from an education background, the health field, we're great around what knowledge do you need? I want to share this information. We can kind of take that to another level by exploring our money mindset. using those money mindset cards. We talked about on the interpersonal level, building relationships with community groups. So really reaching out to financial institutions, reaching out to who are the trusted institution. You know, if you're a financial institution, reaching out to the trusted community-based organizations who have deep relationships with the community. At the institutional level, you know, there are many known ways to, you know, close the racial wealth gap. Issuing baby bonds. Many different cities are looking at this. You know, investing in affordable housing, offering products that meet bank on. At the community level, really asking community to co-design. There's a wonderful article around Berkshire Bank in Massachusetts that hired a community organizer to be on staff, and the community organizer was holding kind of these community listening sessions with folks who were unbanked and underbanked to say, what are the products that you need? Especially right now with COVID, what folks need right now is going to be way different than what they needed 7 months ago. And at the societal level, really noticing and naming and questioning these dominant beliefs around money that we talked about: personal responsibility, toxic individualism, meritocracy, you know, and those are so ingrained. They're in every TV show and movie, and they're in, you know, they're embedded into how we've lived, and and they're in me too. So it's around, you know, when they show up in our work, inevitably, how do we question those, and how do we say, hey, I feel like that's, you know, an individualistic belief. How might we switch that, and how might we look at things from a more interpersonal or institutional or societal level? Let me look to the chat and see what folks are saying. Ryan saying, making sure people with decisions, lived experience, making sure people making the decisions at each of these levels have lived experience in the issues. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if that has big hiring implications, both at community-based organizations, financial institutions. Care for those around us by voting, by being advocates. I mean, absolutely. Connecting with organizations who are policy advocates. That's huge. Not all of our, you know, community-based organizations have a policy or advocacy wing, but can we make a strategic partnership? Can we form some relationships with those organizations who are advocacy based, so we can get things like $15 minimum wage, so we can get things like foreclosure and eviction prevention policies, so we can get more money for small business relief. Engage the community, absolutely. Yeah, there's this really gorgeous, like, symbiotic relationship that we see based on this research with community-based organizations and financial institutions. You know, a lot of community-based organizations taking it upon themselves to have these very deep financial conversations. And it's stressful for the facilitators of that, because we feel like we need to be experts. And, you know, our offering to you is that you don't need to be an expert. You need to open up the conversation and kind of be a trustworthy person, and then connect with a financial institution or connect with financial coaches or financial counselors who can do that very technical work, you know, of getting that information out there. But really building that relationship is super important, and can, you know, reap these benefits for everybody. Beth is saying, exploring where money mindsets come from and the internalized and dominant perspective, paradigm and narrative. Absolutely. Yeah, and so the money mindset cards, a lot of them talk about, you know, what are your beliefs and where do they come from, and opening up that conversation and saying, you know, what do your friends believe about money? What does your family believe about money? How were you raised? What did you grow up maybe in, you know, explicitly or implicitly learning about money? Pushing for living wages, absolutely. After doing a lot of this research on living wage work, I'm like, the fight for, I'm like 20, 25, like 15 almost doesn't seem like enough. And, I signed up for that campaign and get text alerts about kind of what they're doing as well. And it would be a massive win, to be able to raise that federal minimum wage. I love this, Beth, to have the class of participants co-create a new narrative. Yes. Yeah, it's really identifying what that new narrative is and then practicing using that one. We did some work around growth mindset, fixed mindset. And when folks were thinking about growth mindset, they were actually reminding themselves. One woman said, hey, I recognize that that's a fixed mindset kind of perspective. If I was using a growth mindset, how would I think about this situation differently? And she was actually like coaching herself, which was so cool. Yep. Lowering property taxes and making mortgages more available. Love these ideas. To wrap up, I just want to share that you can practice using money mindset cards. They're available on our website. You can go to moneymindsetcards.org. We have 3 cards that are up and available free for use. And you can also purchase the full deck of 30 physical cards. If you purchase a free deck, or if you purchase a physical deck, we can also probably send you a virtual PDF deck to be using during COVID times. And I'm going to skip that one. Yeah, lastly to say, if you have ideas about how, or you have questions about how you might use money mindset cards in your work, or how you might use any of, or have the kind of conversations or make some of these changes in your team or organization, or how to develop this, I would love to have a conversation about that. So please connect with me. I'm Sylvia at theprosperityagenda.org. Feel free to reach out to me. I would love to connect or come over to our website at theprosperityagenda.org. Thank you so much for your time and participation. This was an incredible opportunity to get to connect with you, even in this small chat way.